I'm Alicia Lieberman. I'm a professor in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of California, San Francisco, and direct the Child Trauma Research Program at San Francisco General Hospital.
I read your book about the emotional life of toddlers years ago when I was in grad school, and it was a fascinating book. I think it was the first book that really put in the foreground the emotional life of toddlers. Can you say a little bit about the book, about the emotional life of toddlers?
I'm so glad you like the book. I wrote it when my son was 15 years old, and I was longing for the times when he was 2 years old, and I could just tell him what to do and make him do it, more or less. And it made me think that every developmental transition where children struggle between what they want to do as individuals and what it means for their relationships with the people they love is a reenactment of what happens in the first 2 years of life. And I started watching parents and toddlers in public spaces, in the waiting room of medical clinics, in the park, in the supermarket, and I felt so empathic for toddlers and parents who did not understand each other and who were struggling with each other. And that led me to write the book. I think that toddlerhood is really an effort to find a balance between who you are and who your parents and society want you to be. And that constant balancing of autonomy with relationship, with attachment, is, I think, what defines our personal relationships and our sense of self for the rest of our lives.
So you think the way a toddler, or the way the toddler and his parents resolve that conflict has bearing to what will happen later on in life?
Absolutely, the way parents and toddlers resolve the conflicts of the first 3-4 years of life stamp their conflict resolution style for the rest of their lives. And that's why the first 3 years of life are so important in helping parents understand the emotional life of children, how urgent their need for support and empathic resonance is, and how children's feelings need to be respected and at the same time socialized from the beginning.
And we can't do without the angels. Angels in the nursery. There are ghosts in the nursery, but according to you, there are also angels. What are the ghosts and what are the angels?
The ghosts in the nursery are the suppressed parts of our lives where we felt unresolvable fear and where we could not turn to our parents or other adults to help us with those fears. And so those fears were transformed into self-protective anger because we feel so much stronger when we are angry than when we are afraid. And children who feel helpless need to find some place in themselves that makes them feel strong when they cannot rely on their parents for assistance. And those patterns of transforming anger as a mechanism to fight fear get reenacted with the children that they have. So that when a baby cries, the parent says, "That crying is not important. Shut up." Those are the costs that keep reappearing and interfering with our capacity for loving relationships. What we find in our studies is that when we help parents reconnect with long forgotten memories of feeling supported, feeling loved, feeling wanted, new gates of hope open up for them. And they can use those memories as guides for what they want for their children and how they want to be with their children. And so we use angels in the nursery as antidotes to the ghosts. There are times when parents cannot remember those memories. And we say to them, there's always time to create new memories. Right now, in your relationship with your child, you can create angels. Experiences where the two of you feel connected with each other, feel joy from each other, feel empathic resonance with each other. And parents open themselves up to that possibility because parenting gives us a new opportunity to redo our childhoods. And we need to take advantage of it.
So I think what was so fascinating to me about the ghosts and the angels is that they could both reside in the same childhood, that a parent can look back and say, the ghosts don't erase the angels and the angels don't erase the ghosts.
Yes.
That in my childhood there were tough moments. There were moments when I wasn't understood, or when my parents ignored me, or I wasn't able to trust them. But that there were also in those parents during that childhood moments of hope, of trust. And I think that's the beauty of these ghosts and angels.
You are talking beautifully about what we call healthy ambivalence. The acknowledgement that our lives are a chiaroscuro, to borrow an image from painting. They are the interplay of dark and shadow. And sometimes it is the shadow that enables us to see the light in all its contribution. What we find very often is that when we talk with parents about their childhoods and they start reflecting on what happened to them, they also start thinking about what their parents' experiences were. And they start finding that their parents had a difficult childhood. And there's a new compassion for how come their parents could not be for them what they wanted them to be. And we often find that in helping the parents become more empathic with their parents, with the child's grandparents, there is a new release of positive energy in the relationship between the parent and the child.
Amazing. And how do children respond to that new release?
They respond with joy and with relief and with a sense that the whole family now is surrounding them, and that they are not witnessing coldness or conflict between their parents and grandparents that make them feel divided. That they are seeing that everybody is willing to work things out together. And there's a new sense of connection and trust between them.
Do you find that parents, when they begin to learn the concepts of angels and ghosts, they also find other adults in their childhood that functioned as angels, like grandparents, kind teachers, neighbors?
Very often, when we ask parents to remember moments in their childhood when they felt unconditionally loved and supported, they talk about an aunt, or a grandmother, or a grandfather, or a neighbor, where they went to take refuge when things were very difficult at home. And that's why I think the old African saying of "it takes a village to raise a child" is so helpful, because creating a sense of community can really help parents at those moments when they're too tired, too distressed, too disconnected, too absorbed in their own difficulties to be available to their children. And when they can turn to other adults with the knowledge that those adults can be there for their children, things can be so much better for everybody in the family.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I really liked what you said before about fear turning into aggression, that behind aggressive parenting stands a fearful child, somebody whose needs were not met, and he or she needed to become more aggressive in order to cover up for the fear and the anxiety. So do you find that during the intervention or during the time you go through psychotherapy, when parents take out the shield of aggressiveness and become connected to their weakness, to the child in them that was afraid and unprotected, they may go through a period of mourning, a period of difficulty, a period of sadness before they emerge?
Very much so. And our role as interveners is to keep them company at those times of despair and to hold up a conviction that this is temporary, that this is inevitable, and they are doing the work of reconciling themselves with everything that they wish they had and did not have, but that they have the resources internally to find how to create those new memories in the present, and that we will be there with them to help them create it, so that when they reconnect with the pain, they don't feel alone with the pain. And in that sense, we like to think of our work as what we call a corrective emotional experience, a corrective relational experience, when we show them that relationships can really open up new ways of being, and that there is hope and change, and they can do it.
Can you share with us a child, a family that stuck in your mind, a child that you had in therapy, that you remember?
I remember very vividly a little girl who was 3 years old, whose mother could not control her anger towards her when the little girl was not compliant, or when the little girl did not make the mother feel loved. And she yelled at the child, and she put the child in her room, shut the door, and went to watch TV as a way of dealing with her unmanageable feelings. And the 3-year-old would cry and cry behind the closed door, saying, "Mommy, Mommy, come back. Don't leave me. Don't leave me." And the mother would say, "I can't come back. You're bad." This little girl had a thumb that was raw from her sucking it again and again. And I met with the little girl and with the mother together. And when the little girl did something that made the mother angry, in particular when she did not put the toys away at the end of the session, I would say something like, "You like so much to be here with your mommy, because when you are here with me, your mommy plays with you and pays attention to you, and the two of you have such a good time together, and it's so hard to stop. You like these moments with your mommy. And the mother, the first time I said it, said, she's just pretending. She doesn't like to be with me. And I said, you are not used to being loved. You are not used to people wanting to be with you, because that's not how you grew up. And this enabled the mother to kind of look at herself with new eyes. And I said, you are missing the ways that she's telling you, because you are not used to loving as a way of connecting. And that really started the change and created a new sense of, on the mother's part, of, you mean I'm lovable? You mean she wants me? And it softened their relationship, and they were able to get to this healthy ambivalence when there were times when the mother still would get very angry. But at those times, she did not blame the child. Mm-hmm. She said, oh, there I go again, assuming that she doesn't love me and forgetting that she's only 3 years old. That was a very transformational family for me, because it was the first time that I dared to talk about the early experiences of being unloved and see what a difference it made in the present.
So you'd think this is, I think the most striking element here is that you're not trying to put in the therapy the relationship between the child and yourself as the therapist. And you're not trying to help her learn new skill, but you're trying to repair the mother's relationship with the child and bring back the love to the mother, not take the love to the therapist.
Yes, we are very aware of the fact that we are temporary people in the mother's and child's lives, and that the real relationship that needs to last is the relationship between the parent and the child. And so we see ourselves as facilitators of that relationship rather than as the central makers of a new relationship. We help them discover each other rather than present ourselves as the ones that are the experts.
Mm-hmm. And do you find that therapy at a young age, toddlers, preschoolers, or even infants, has a unique quality? It's easier to intervene when children are young. You can do more in fewer sessions. Okay?
The first 3 years of life, I think, are the magical years for intervention, because the changes that we facilitate then can last for the rest of the child's life and of the parent's life and create a new way of relating, which has found out that children and parents treated in this way 9 years later continue to show much healthier behaviors in relation to each other and in relation to themselves, individual behaviors, than a comparison group that was treated in the more conventional way of teaching skills. Mm-hmm. So we know that this emphasis on inner life, on emotions, on relationships, really is the way to create lasting change.
Mm-hmm. And I think that what struck me so much when I read your research and your books about the dyadic therapy, the special dyadic therapy you developed and you used with the inner city and children with domestic violence, is that you say time and again that the patient is not the child or the parent, but the patient, the focus is the relationship. And this brings a whole new level to psychotherapy?
Yes, I think that we tended to forget for many decades that we really are our relationships, and that our self is expressed in our relationships, and that when we can derive more safety, more pleasure, more trust from our relationships, something changes in our sense of self, so that there is a feedback loop, and it is through the relationships that we can go into the sense of self.
Right. Right. So you using the relationship as a port of entry into the self, then targeting the relationship would build and enhance the child's sense of self.
Targeting key relationships around which the child's sense of safety and of being loved are organized changes the sense of self. That being said, I think that we also use relationships to find out, are we making a change in the sense of self? Because a relationship is not an end in itself. A relationship is our means towards individual health. And so there are times when we think this relationship is so entrenched as an ungiving relationship, as a damaging relationship, that we need to think, is this the way to work with this particular parent and this particular child? And sometimes parents and children need individual therapy to safely explore with the therapist areas that they don't dare to explore with each other.
Have you had any experience with dads in therapy, dyadic therapy with fathers?
We use a lot of our energy in recruiting fathers into
not so easy,
therapy.
right?
Not so easy.
Not so easy.
Not so easy. There are times that fathers think, I'm not important in my child's life. The real relationship is between the mother and the child. And our goal is to help them realize how important they are in their children's lives. And this is particularly important in situations when the mother and the father are not living together, and where the child longs for the father, and the father doesn't know it because he's not there often enough. And so helping mothers accept the child's need for the father, and helping fathers own their centrality in the child's lives, is really very important in the work that we're doing.
Right. And I think this empowering fathers is such an important thing now, because most mothers are working and they can't handle it alone.
Yes.
Yet a lot of times mothers feel that, these gatekeeping mothers, they don't want to give fathers some room in the child's life, especially if they're angry at the father. And helping mothers understand that no matter how they feel about the father, the child still needs a father, and the father still needs the child. I think it's a real art.
One of the things that we say to mothers is, it is in your own best interest to support your child's relationship with his or her father, because children often get very mad at their moms when they think that they are standing in the way of their relationship with the father. So in order to really preserve a sense of trust, I recommend that we explore together what stands in the way of your wanting your child's father in your child's life. And let's find a way where you can reconcile your sense that you are the one who's there for the child, and the child's sense that he wants his daddy. And we make progress. We're making progress in that.
I have a question I'd like to ask you because of your extensive knowledge in early infancy and in psychotherapy. And there's very little research about it. It's about siblings in early infancy, in the first years of life. What is the role of siblings? How siblings get along? What they learn from each other? What is the importance of siblings at this stage? Or are there?
Siblings are hugely important at this age. And I am reminded of what a great pediatrician and psychoanalyst, Donald Winnicott, said about how if 2, 3, 4-year-olds do not have a sibling, they are missing an opportunity to learn the difficult lesson of sharing love. And I think, of course, only children can grow up to learn how to share love. One has to share love no matter what, and there are different settings where one learns that. But one of the reasons that I take issue with the word dyadic treatment and like to use relational treatment instead is that very often we include siblings in the treatment, because what we find is that the parents feel so divided, let's say between the baby who's good and the toddler who's bad, or the child that fits their wishes for what they want in a child and the one who doesn't. Or also times where the siblings, the 2, 3, 4-year-olds, sense of indignation at the birth of a baby, or helplessness vis-a-vis the older child, really make the parent feel very helpless in how to get in there and be fair to both sides. And so in the therapeutic session, they are reenacting what's happening at home, and we can help the parents use reflectiveness to stop the movie and think, what just happened there? And talk to the children about what just happened there, and then find new solutions that are satisfying to all the partners involved.
Yes, and my last question, so the last topic that I think is important to discuss is educators. Can any of this vast knowledge that you gain from working with parents and infants and toddlers and siblings and moms and dads and grandparents, can it be translated to early child care providers? What could they learn?
Early childhood providers are essential figures in children's emotional life. And everything that applies to parents applies also to childcare providers. One of the most satisfying things that we do is provide training and consultation to childcare providers about what are children trying to tell us when they cry inconsolably after the parent leaves, or when they are aggressive with other peers. And we talk to them about the core fears of childhood, which are the fear of loss, losing the parent. Will the parent come back after a long day in childcare? Losing love and approval. The fear of body damage. Will I be hurt? And the fear of being bad, which is evoked when the caregiver disapproves of them. Is this my fault? Am I bad? If I'm bad, will my teacher still love me? If my teacher doesn't love me, Does it mean that I'm unlovable and my mom will also not love me, or my dad will also not love me? And so being in the classroom with these situations and helping childcare providers reframe their understanding of children's behavior in the context of children's anxieties, so that they can respond reassuringly rather than punitively, can really transform the climate of the classroom. In Israel, there is a beautiful study that was done where, instead of focusing on the teacher-child relationship, the video camera focused on children watching what happened between the teacher and an individual child. And their expressions were so eloquent. And there was a direct response between what the teacher was doing with the child and what the children then did. When the teacher was reassuring, supportive, the children were much more kind with each other. When there was punishment and anger, the children started to do the same, because affect is contagious.
Right. And also they serve as really important role models in the child's life.
That's right, because children learn by imitation, and they want to do what the grown-up does. And so changing how the childcare provider relates to children from a more punitive stance to a more empathic and supportive stance can be very good for the classroom and very good for the teacher, because she's going to have more fun, or he's going to have more fun and satisfaction from the work.
Right. And then eventually it's internalized in the child and perhaps then can reflect on the parents. So sometimes a good atmosphere in a child care can then, through the child, maybe transmit it to the home and create a better atmosphere between the parent and the child.
That is such an important point. We find that children who are helped in the classroom to acquire a way of relating to each other that is kinder and more reciprocal become kinder and more reciprocal in the home. And the parents learn from their children.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. How we can learn from our children.
Yes.
And this brings us a full circle from the ghosts and the angels, which the parents learned from his or her own parents, to the kind of learning you do between the parents and the children, to the kind of learning parents can do from their own children.
Yes, the wonderful thing about relationships is that they are reciprocal. They go both ways. And when parents learn from their children, there is often such a change in their gratitude towards their children for opening new vistas for them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.